Hi, Ron from Clarity. In today's video, we're going to give you some key tips on how to evaluate if your vendor is following and doing HIPAA security well. Let's jump right into it. Number one, confirm PHI data encryption. How do we do that? Well, talk to them and figure out what their methodology is for protecting, it's called PHI, protected health information. How are they doing it? Is the entire system protected? Is it a fully HIPAA compliant environment that you're hosting with? Or are you paying HIPAA hosting fees? If you're not, then there's got to be another way to do it. And that the only other two ways to do it are tokenization or embedding third-party HIPAA compliant tools. For example, I could have a non-compliant WordPress website. I have a really small, let's say I'm a chiropractor, I'm a one-man army, and I want to have patient intake forms that are going to have some PHI data on them. The only way I could do that would be to grab a third-party tool that is a HIPAA-compliant form intake tool that's up in the cloud that's HIPAA-compliant, and then I can embed the form using an SSL certificate on a page on my website. They fill out the form, the data is transferred up to the cloud into that tool, and then I have to log into that tool to see the data of my patients. Very similar to, I've got an app, I take a picture of a check, I put the check in, but the check doesn't go on my phone and the money's not on my phone. It goes up into the cloud and goes into my bank account in a secure vault at chase.com. Same kind of thing. So you've only got three methods. Make sure they're following those methods and they're well documented, and they can explain exactly the pros and cons of each of the three methods. Number two, inspect the administrative audit trails and alerts. There are different levels of audit trails that you need. There can be a significant amount of subpoenas and insurance fraud that can occur in medical cases. For example, let's just say, for example, I have type 2 diabetes. My best friend, Dr. Bob, is my doctor. We run a blood test and find out that I've progressed into type 1 insulin dependent. And he puts that on my record and he tells me at my next meeting, and I'm like, Bob, I don't have life insurance. I can't do that. So can you back it out and give me a little time to go get some life insurance, or I'm never going to be able to get covered. So he backs it out. I go out, get my policy, and then the next month later he puts it in, but now it's after I have my policy, so we're all good, right? Well, let's say a year from now I die of complications of type 1 diabetes. The insurance company can go, wait a minute, that seems awful fishy. They can subpoena the records. And you have to be able to show that Dr. Bob went in and said before the policy, Ron was diagnosed with type 1, and then 2 days later it was backed out, and then 1 month later it was put back in. That level of audit trail in encrypted user level access logs has to be done if you're allowing providers to edit PHI data. So that level is not necessarily required if you're not. For example, an online pharmacy may not need that if in that platform isn't where they're changing their prescriptions, right? So let's say, for example, same thing. The provider changed their prescription. They went to something else that had a negative reaction, sent them to the hospital. They almost died. They want to sue the doctor. They go back in and change it back and go, what? I never did that. That has to be subpoenable and trackable. So check how are they doing the audit trails, what data is being protected and tracked. And then the final one is, do they have a protocol or a response plan when there are data breaches? Now, most vendors you're going to talk to, they're not going to admit to a data breach, and probably 95% have probably never even seen a data breach. It is very rare. When it happens, it's bad. Have they even prepared for it? If you're not prepared on how to address a breach, then how ready are you for a breach, and how in-depth are your protocols to prevent said breaches? For the last 5 years running, the OCR has administered more fines to people because of data breaches. Now, most of those data breaches, just as if for what it's worth, are giving members of their staff access to more data than they're allowed or should have access to. For example, I'm a receptionist and I have access to the EMR and I can go in and look at everybody's records. Well, I don't need that to provide care, to schedule appointments and address the phones and schedule the appointments for my providers. I don't need access to that data. That is actually a breach of HIPAA. And HIPAA breaches have to be reported internally. You have to report yourself, and you're only given X number of days. And in minor breaches, kind of like the one I just mentioned, those have to be reported, I believe, within the same calendar year. All that information's up on the hhs.gov site. You'll find it there. Anyway, so to quickly review, how do you review your vendor to make sure they're ready and properly taking care of your PHI security and data needs? Number one, confirm their data encryption and tokenization methodology. Number two, do they have an administrative audit trail? And do they have an alerting system? And then number three, do they have a response plan, response protocol for data breaches when they occur? Hope that helps. We'll catch you in the next one.